Hey guys, welcome back to the Arthritis Podcast, official podcast of digital and creative media works, where each week we take some from pop culture and try to break it down to better understand it. My name is David.
My name is Ben.
And it's another week, it's another episode of our program. And this week and this month, we're talking about all kinds of efficiency, different ways different properties are leveraging what they have to the best of their ability. And different companies are doing something different and interesting with what's in front of them. We are going to have ThatAdly on our show in a few minutes. He's just getting set up at the moment.
Maybe. Hopefully.
Maybe. Those of you watching this live, there will be a brief transitionary period. Pat, he's messaged you on that window to your right there. This is where I live produce from the other side.
Yeah, it's very professional.
Very profesh, but yeah, so we're talking about Bandersnatch this month, and this week. Wow, okay.
Wow, you wanna...
I can cut that from the edit, it's fine.
That's fine.
Yeah, that's fine.
Yeah, this isn't in the edit. What are you talking about?
This week we are talking about the efficiency of Bandersnatch. Bandersnatch is a psychological thriller, interactive Black Mirror film.
Thing?
Published in 2018, written by Charlie Brooker and David Slade, directed by David Slade. It's an interesting one. I don't even know, that's the summary, that's the description. The summary is complicated to even talk about.
Yeah.
Had you heard anything about this before I told you about it?
Oh, absolutely. It's fucking everywhere.
Oh, is it? Okay.
Yeah. No, this is as big as Bird Box.
I didn't know that. Okay.
This is on the same, I knew about this through the memes more so than I knew about Bird Box.
Mm-hmm.
Bird Box was just, I saw the advertising, whereas this isn't being advertised, this is purely just word of mouth
internet,
and just, I think the first time I saw it was Netflix is doing a Choose Your Own Adventure episode of Black Mirror. And I was like, oh, okay, whatever. And I don't know, I intended to watch it at some point. Glad I did, because it's really good. I really like it.
Okay, interesting. Yeah, we have very different opinions about this one, boys.
I think we do.
Not that I dislike it, but I guess I didn't know anything about it going into it, so I didn't have any expectations.
I kind of knew what they were going to do, and my sort of initial expectations were tainted a bit by crappy old FMV Choose Your Own Adventure video games from the 90s and stuff.
I feel like a lot of those too came as extras on DVDs and things.
Yeah, I was expecting a lot less. So I think I'm more impressed by the technical aspects of it and how they pulled it off.
There's a lot of that stuff which is really interesting, actually.
Yeah. And I think it's just kind of good.
It's got a lot of cool ideas. So we're joined by ThatAdly, who's just jumped online. How's it going, Adam?
Hello. I've been thinking about it a lot recently because I'm doing the video on it, and because we had you sent me the doc last night. I've been thinking about it pretty much all of last night and this morning.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
So
well,
hopefully that means we can get something
good. Yeah. Keen to hear your thoughts. All right, let's get rolling on the summary, and then we'll see where it takes us. In 1984 England, also, by the way, it's set in 1984, which I thought was a bit on the nose.
Of course
we'll get to that.
Yeah.
In 1984 England, young programmer Stefan Butler pitches his Choose Your Own Adventure adaptation of Bandersnatch, a book by tragic writer Jerome F. Davies. Stefan pitches the game to Tuckersoft, run by Mohan Thakur. Stefan wants to work alongside famous game maker Colin Rittman and is offered the opportunity to work at Tuckersoft, but elects instead to complete his game at home. If the player chooses to work at the company, we flash forward and see the game is released and panned for being designed by committee. Moving forward, Stefan works on the game in his bedroom, heading toward a September deadline. As time progresses, Stefan grows increasingly stressed and hostile toward his father. Throughout the story, Stefan visits Dr. Haynes for clinical therapy. The viewer may have Stefan explain to Dr. Haynes about his mother's death when he was 5. Peter, his father, had taken his stuffed rabbit toy, believing boys Stefan's age should not be playing with dolls, and Stefan's stubbornness to refuse to leave without it forced his mother to take a train, the next train later, which derailed and killed several passengers, including her. As a result, Stefan feels responsible for her death, and given she loved Bandersnatch, he thinks completing the game will offer him some level of peace. Dr. Haynes prescribes medication to help with Stefan's anxiety. The viewer has the option to visit Rittman's flat, where he lives with his girlfriend Kitty and infant daughter Pearl. There, the pair take hallucinogens, and Rittman talks about secret government mind control programs, alternate timelines, and different paths.
When you make a decision, you think it's you doing it, but it's not. It's the spirit out there that's connected to our world that decides what we do, and we just have to go along for the ride.
To demonstrate his theories on alternate realities, Rittman demands Stefan, via the viewer, determine which one of them should jump off his balcony. In the future scenes, Rittman will be mysteriously absent if he was the one that jumped. As the deadline approaches, strange errors in the game persist, and Stefan feels like he's being influenced by quote-unquote outside forces. He begins to question his father and Dr. Haynes and their motives. Stefan finds himself mirroring Davy's life, the author of Bandersnatch, seeing constant imagery of branching pathways everywhere, and we learn this madness led Davies to behead his wife. As Stefan breaks down from his 1984 computer screen, he sees conflicting messages. The messages are from whoever has been controlling him. At this point, the player gets to choose, one of which being that they are making these decisions for him via a Netflix service in the 21st century. The viewer may discover a locked safe that either contains Stefan's old toy rabbit or documents about him being monitored as part of an experiment.
Or a jump scare. Just a few.
Oh yeah, that one as well. That's random.
Yeah. There are numerous possible endings. I'm just going to run through them and then we can talk about it, because again, the summary is really difficult, but we'll just kind of go through and see where we end up. And these aren't all the endings, they're just some of the key ones. One path leads to Stefan fighting his therapist during a session, after which it's revealed that he is in a movie set and that his dad is a fellow actor. One set of choices leads Stefan following Rittman's advice, seemingly crossing through a mirror to his 5-year-old self to go along with his mother to die in the derailment, causing Stefan's body to suddenly die in the present.
That's the Donnie Darko ending.
That's the Donnie Darko ending.
Yeah.
In other paths, the viewer has the option to make Stefan kill his father, then bury or chop up his father's body, and we're given the option to kill Rittman or Takua. Burying the body leads Stefan to being jailed before the release of the game. Chopping up and not letting his therapist know about the murder leads to the successful release of the game, but Stefan goes to prison shortly afterwards, leading to all copies of the game being pulled from the shelves and pulped. In some endings, the viewer is shown the critical reaction to the Bandersnatch game and the fate of Tuckersoft. Other endings conclude in the present day with a grown-up Pearl, now a programmer for Netflix, attempting to adapt it into an interactive film, which leads her to start experiencing the same branching path imagery seen by both Davies and Butler. How meta, how cool, what a good story. Goodbye, the credits, we're done.
I think I'm getting a migraine.
Yeah, I think my nose is bleeding or something. Shout out to Bioshock Infinite. Yeah, I don't know. We were talking about it before in the introduction, Adam. What did you think of this? Because you kind of put me onto it. We watched it together. What were you vibing off it when you came out of it?
I think compared to like a lot of previous Black Mirror content, its music was really, really good.
Okay.
It worked really well.
80s
and its
music.
Its visuals were really, really fucking good.
Mm-hmm.
Other than that, it wasn't a very good piece of media.
My first
Why do you guys not like it? I really like
this.
this.
I think it tricked
you. Liked it? What's wrong with you?
I really enjoyed it.
Tell us why, and then let us ruin it for you.
Yeah, I want to know. I want to know why you liked it.
So the reason I liked it, well, I think the setting of the game development in the 80s is so different to what it is today, and that whole sort of especially in the UK where they had a really big 8-bit computing boom, which didn't really happen anywhere else. Like the US was mainly gripped by like the Nintendo and Sega, whereas the UK was very much having like the Commodore 64, the ZX Spectrum, which is what they're actually using. Like they have actual ZX Spectrum machines. That's the things they're all programming on, which is why when it says smash the computer, he takes the keyboard and smashes the keyboard, because the ZX Spectrum was just the keyboard. That was the
computer. That is the computer.
That's cool.
The computer was just the keyboard and just plugs into the monitor. So when he smashes the keyboard, that's why it breaks the computer.
A little attention to detail from
which is why when she like pours tea over the computer as Pearl at the end, you're like, well, who cares? That's just a modern keyboard that doesn't actually do anything. Which is a funny.
Oh really? No, on my go, she did the monitor. She smashed like a cup like through the monitor.
Yeah, we had the ending.
Pour tea over. She just pours tea over the keyboard.
So how many endings did you guys actually get?
Well, I only watched it with you, Adam.
I ran through it twice, so I got pretty much all the endings, except for
3?
Well,
Couple.
Adam and I got one that I really liked, and then it ruined it by going back and showing me more. So we got to the end, and it was really good, and I was really satisfied. And then it kept reeling back.
What
and I
one was
fucking
it?
hated
Sorry.
Well, so
what
that-
ending was it initially?
Our ending was we didn't kill our dad. No, we killed our dad, and then we released the game and went to prison. And I was really satisfied with the way it played.
Oh,
out.
you got like the quote unquote real ending where it gets a 5 out of 5.
Yeah.
Do you know the shot of Stefan at his computer, and then it fucking like focuses in to the head that's like on the shelf opposite Stefan?
Yeah.
That was definitely the coolest shot. That looked so good.
But again, like stylistically, it's really impressive. It has a strong voice, and I think in a lot of ways it edges into being even more interesting to watch than a lot of the other Black Mirror episodes. But I think that under the weight of the choice system that they went with, one of my biggest criticisms is just the basic structure of the scene work itself. And again, what they did was impressive, and I'm impressed by it. But there's a way you can do this and have it work. And what they did is they went, it has to be about the choices, not about how well each choice serves the story. So one of the things that, just like as a quick example, a lot of the scenes don't really have valence shifts like they should from a structure perspective because of the choices you make. So for example, when you choose to work at the company, then it shows you the scene of the game performing poorly. This doesn't work because the previous beat of the story ends with you being put down by your father or the negative interaction with your father. And there's a lot of these moments, like, and I had a list of 5, I'm not going to read them out, but a lot of those moments where you make a choice and it changes the way that the scene plays out, they didn't write the scenes in a way that kept it structurally sound and structurally interesting. So even though it's cool to be like, oh yeah, well I chose to work, at home, and that's like a good thing because you keep the freedom of the game.
Yeah.
It doesn't always work because they didn't consider like the actual script ramifications of changing that scene work.
There's a few also purely nonsensical scenes that can occur if you make certain choices. So when I went through the second time, I sort of tried to do the complete opposite of what I did the first time I went through. So like the obvious choices, like, well, first accepting the request and then doing that crazy loop, which is pretty mind-bending, and then following Colin, which fucking everyone follows Colin, because that just makes sense from a narrative perspective.
On the street, yeah.
If you don't follow Colin, you technically, your main character doesn't, what's his name again? Stefan. Technically,
Stefan.
he's not meant to know anything about the whole, because so when Colin is going on this crazy tirade, he mentions like, the pack, he mentions all this other stuff, but he also drops the line, mirrors are portals to other dimensions.
Mirrors let you move through time.
Which is what kind of, when you go to Colin the first time, that's like the drive for when you go to the mirror, you're like, oh, mirrors are portals. And then he goes to the mirror and it's a wild freak out. Except you can get that mirror scene without talking to Colin. Which is just kind of like, it's a bit weird.
Dumb.
It's a bit like the director's cut of Donnie Darko.
Yeah, it's a bit unfortunate where there's some very obvious choices that they want you to make. Like, they want you, when you run through the first time, they want you to accept the offer to work there and have that really crazy, like that loop where they, you accept the offer and then it just jumps to the end of the thing, gives you an ending, gives you a loop around. That's really big, because that tells you early on what Bandersnatch is about, which is doing these rotations.
It wasn't of any consequence, though.
Yeah, I'm with Adam.
I don't think it needs to be a consequence, because I don't think the story is important. I don't think the nature of finishing Bandersnatch is
it wasn't even of consequence to Stefan, though. It's like the closest thing to a reaction to doing the same thing over and over is they were planning on introducing one line of dialogue if you ask Stefan to chop up a body for the 3rd time in a row, where he like finally says, all right, okay, let's get going. I'll just chop it up already. That was the closest thing to actually having an impact on the character.
I agree. To put it into words, because I've been thinking about this a lot, I don't disagree that the story isn't the point. But if you're gonna do this and put this much money behind it, why not just also write a good story? Like, if you have that option, like you fucking Charlie Brooker, you can do it. You've written Black Mirror episodes. Like, someone said, like, because so when they pitched it to him, they were like, do this choose your own adventure thing. And he was like, I've never done that before. And instead of what you should do, which is hire a writer who's done that before to help you, he went, I'll do it with David Slade, the one guy in the entire world who says yes to everything I suggest. Like, that's not good decision making on Black Mirror's part, I don't think. You know, if you have the choice to make it good and make it like, because the story's not the point. I agree. The point is the choices. But like, as we've seen with The Walking Dead, you can also just have a good story at the same time. Like, you can do both.
I think. I mean, the story isn't amazing because there are like flaws in it, and it does. Once again, because I ran through it pretty much to the point where I had every ending. There's pretty much two. There's only two choices that actually matter in the entire thing. There's the first choice is whether you go to see Colin, because again, I've done this I've seen every path, and again, you can look at the map and you can kind of.
I'll put a link in the.
Yeah, you can see what choices actually have the most impact. So the two choices that have the most impact are whether you go to see Colin or not, because that does diverge. It means Colin's alive or dead. Like, that's a pretty major part of the story. And the second choice is, and it comes around a couple of times depending on what you do, mainly if you run through this choice multiple times in a single sitting, but when he sort of goes like, oh, give me a sign, and you can only choose one of two at a time, but depending on how many times you run through a choice and then double back to that point, you can usually get all of them. And that's the toy, the symbol, pack, or Netflix. Those are the only two choices that really matter.
I don't know that the choices need to like necessarily matter. I think it's the illusion, which
those choices really dictate what kind of narrative it turns into.
But those are more like in the, because the key symbol of the story is the branching pathway, like little like arrows.
Ironically, the branching pathway is the most just like standard story that you get. It's just the whole concept behind that just becomes. I'm not controlling. Someone is controlling me.
Or it's like none of this like it's the Rick and Morty thing. None of this matters. There's 10 billion.
I think that's
versions.
the weakest part of this.
I don't know that it's certainly the least interesting. I don't know if it's the weakest. I just think it's the easiest reading, which is why it's the most obvious choice.
Right. For me, the strongest part of Bandersnatch, and I've seen this like in a few articles, people calling this like the new medium. Which, like,
what?
Not really.
Like, choose your own adventure.
Yeah, like if they do more like
it's
this.
ancient.
Well, in terms of like,
like a film,
like Netflix film, like choose your own adventures.
What if they could do this?
I think
it was
the
so
biggest,
bad. Like the actual option, like of choosing.
We'll talk about that in a minute. We'll talk about that in a minute.
I think the biggest reason why, for me, I felt this did well was it emulated the act of using a choose your own adventure book quite well.
Yes.
And the way I think that happened is because of when you finish a path, it gives you the option to go back, but it curates those options really well. You can't just go, oh, I've gotten an ending, I want to go all the way back to choosing what cereal I get.
So like in Goosebumps, for instance, which were great examples, the Goosebumps choose your own adventures, you would get to an endpoint and you die at the end, and it would say go back to and it says turn back to page 55 when you're in the tent. That was when you fucked up, and you're like, what? And you flip back to the tent and you go through.
Well, I think with this, they even did that to the next level, where they would give you like two options to go back. They would give you the option to jump back a short distance, which would sometimes just give you the Colin, where you go to his place. If you jump off, if you decide that you're going to jump off, which of course I did, because I was like, this is just going to kill me and be a dead end, so I'm going to do it. You get the option to either go back to the choice, or go back to the choice of you or Colin, or go all the way back to whether you follow Colin or you go to the doctors. If you go all the way back to the doctor, you continue the doctor, or Colin is alive. If you just go back to Colin and you kill Colin, it wraps you around back to the doctor, but now Colin is dead. So it gives you the option of just like, you know what's going to happen. Colin is going to die. You can either kill Colin, because of course he's going to jump off, because, he seems pretty adamant about one of you jumping. Or you can back out of this option. You can be like, actually, I don't actually want this to happen. Because when I ran through and he's like, do you want to take the LSD? I was like, hell yeah. When I went through the second time,
drug me up, Scotty. Yeah.
When I went through the second time and I was like, no, I don't actually want to take it. I want to see where this path goes. He just drugs you. And I was like,
yeah, no, he just drugs your teeth.
Okay. And that was the ding in my moment. I was like, that's why they give you the two options. Because if you go in here and you go, when I played for the second time and I say, no, I don't want to take the LSD, and he drugs me, I was like, no, I already know where this path goes. But then I remembered, wait, if I just kill myself, I get the option to go back to the doctor. I don't have to restart and watch this thing for half an hour.
Interesting.
I can just kill myself, go back to the doctor, continue down the path that actually has a different path.
So it sounds like
I guess that's your option in every stressful situation. You can
just get it off. Adam, it feels like what happened, and maybe
The reason why I think this is really good is because it takes the power of a choose your own adventure book where you as a reader can just go, no, this was bad. I'm gonna keep my thumb in this page, and I'm gonna keep reading.
Which is what you did.
I'm gonna flip back with my thumb.
And you checked. It was fun.
And Netflix have gone, we know how people are going to react, and especially on the second watch through. We know that people are going to come through the second time and go, I'm going to do this path, but I'm going to branch off here. And even though the story comes back to, it does one of those, it does a circle, which is typical choose your own adventure
also,
bullshit.
just any game design ever. Yeah.
A player may go, oh, god damn it, now I have to restart from the start. But Netflix is like, no. We've got a thumb for you.
So we can agree that at least the choice system is well designed.
Yes.
Adam,
I'm not disagreeing that the narrative is a bit weak.
We'll get to that kind of toward the end.
I think the design is so smart, and it's probably the best first choose your own adventure thing they could have done. Is something that focuses on the choice so that they could really nail the system of.
Well, it's interesting because a fun fact that I found during my research is that this choose your own adventure thing in Netflix has been around for ages, just with kids' TV show and stuff.
Really?
It's been around
Wait, really? The tech?
Yeah, the tech.
Seriously?
So
What?
The way that Charlie Brooker
With kids shows?
Yeah, the way that Charlie Brooker
Wow.
adapted it is much more complex, and they
Okay.
had to rebuild a lot of it. But yeah, it's been around for ages in kids' TV shows.
That's amazing.
And I was like, sorry?
I didn't even know.
That's
yeah.
insane. I had no idea.
Neither did I. It wasn't until I was reading through and doing some like deep dives, and I went, wait, what? Apparently, because I assume they built it from scratch.
Yeah.
It's been around for ages, and they had to like
insane.
they had to rebuild a lot of the back end for the complexity
absolutely.
of what he was looking for. But
Yeah.
like, especially from an engineering perspective, the ability to stream video in that way doesn't really exist.
When I was watching it, I was expecting like
Buffering?
every time and the first time when you choose the serial and it just went seamless, I was like, oh shit.
Okay, so you know how Minecraft loads chunks, right?
Yes. That's what they do.
Yeah.
That's what they do.
preload
They preload the
two
chunks around
options.
you as you're
Yeah.
watching what you're watching at the moment.
It's so smart.
So a lot of the people.
That's a big part. It's seamless.
People with slow internet they can't watch it really.
Ooh, that's,
But again,
I mean, that's technology in a nutshell. If you
which
have bad
I don't think
internet,
that's
it
not a
sucks.
criticism, but just a fun fact.
Fun fact.
Fun fact.
If your internet sucks, hello,
Fuck
Australia.
you.
Anywhere in Australia, you're fucked, mate. Adam, tell me about because we watched it together. I feel like, and
Yeah,
talk to me.
I just thought it might be worth mentioning that in a game that, in fairness, I moan about a lot, but in the game Life is Strange, which is
Actually,
just for,
if you
just
guys
for-
haven't watched Adam's brilliant YouTube video, check it out.
I was
where he's-
thinking Life is Strange during this.
where he
as well.
spends a solid 10 minutes
just-
just deconstructing that game. It's fantastic.
Just for context, Life is Strange, you play this character who can time travel back. She can time travel back to like 30 seconds before what just happened. That allows you to do a bunch of different stuff. There's like a full Groundhog Day scene remake, which is really cool. Or cheap, depending on which way you want to look at it. But in that game, the more you travel back and loop back, the more damaged your character becomes, both psychologically and physically. Like, you start to get nosebleeds after a while, and then the nosebleeds start to get worse, and then you start to get angry, and then you start to get more angry.
That's Life is Strange.
And then you start
Not
to
as good as he
get...
makes it sound.
okay.
It's not. Don't don't get me wrong.
Just
It's
play
not as good
Bioshock
as...
Infinite instead. Sorry,
Yeah.
Adam, go ahead. I didn't mean to interrupt you.
But the more and more you loop back and the more you interact with people in different ways, the more your character and you as a player get confused about what your relationship really is with characters.
Oh, because you confused what happened and what didn't happen.
Right. Yeah.
That
That's
was
so
done
interesting.
as a deliberate part of the story, and it's one of the best bits of Life is Strange. But in Black Mirror, if you make the same decision 2 or 3 times and you look back over and over again, Stefan doesn't change.
How cool
There are
would it
points
have
where he
been if
just
they'd
goes
done
from
that?
like perfectly sane sounding to complete raving lunatic, like the flip of a switch.
Yeah.
There's
Yeah.
no gradual progression.
Yeah.
There's no like slow dip in toe by toe by toe.
Agreed.
It just happens.
That's a fault of the scene work, I think, because they didn't... Like, obviously they couldn't have filmed every scene 20 times or whatever from, like, a budgetary perspective, but, again, like, you can do that in a way that... It feel like... I don't
That's
mean to
why
be, like,
that's why video games kind of have the advantage, because they don't
Yeah.
take the budget to recreate scenes as much.
Right.
Yeah.
Or same
It's
with
like
like
a day in the
animation.
studio for the
Yeah,
actors.
animation, you can change one detail in a character by drawing something onto their model or
Yeah.
whatever.
And I think they kind of like blew their load a bit with the when you start the episode, and again everyone accepts the offer from the software company, and then they do that wraparound, and the second time you go through, Colin now suddenly, he's read Bandersnatch, he knows all about.
Yeah, it's weird.
They kind of blew their load on there, where it's like, okay, cool, we're running through this a second time, now Colin is kind of a different character, and like he like
Colin
now
thing's
knows
too on
about.
the nose.
I agree. I think it's a.
It was
I
so
agree.
aggravating. It was
but
like every 5 minutes he dropped this like dumb snide comment, or he made a joke about a story. It was like, I get that he's supposed to be that sort of character, but it's like
Did you
he
get to
can
the-
he
did you
can
guys-
shut the fuck up. He can.
Did you guys get to the scene where you kill Colin where he comes to your house and you kill him after you kill your dad?
Yes, and it's like,
That's
right,
the
oh, get
worst.
it over then.
Yeah,
And
no,
he
I hated
bends
that.
over. That was brilliant.
yeah.
I thought that was
No,
hilarious.
I agree. That I hate that.
It's funny, but it makes
I think
no
it's
sense.
better. I think his scene at his house is decent because that's like, that's like the tripping on LSD scene.
Yeah,
and
the
he's just
visual
throwing all
effects
these
on that scene
conspiracies.
were awesome, dude.
They were dope. Yeah.
That was cool. I thought him. Yeah, I thought he was an interesting character. Where like, I don't know. It's weird because he's just a game developer. Like, there's no signs that he's like this woke third eye person.
I know he's got bleached hair in the fucking 80s, mate. Tell you what,
It's really the only indication
those
you
eyebrows.
get.
Yeah.
Well, really, the only indication you get that he's like aware of the situation, like he's sort of like the Deadpool kind of character, is when you go through and you accept.
Yeah.
And you accept the offer, and then it wraps back around, and he's suddenly a different character. Like, that's really the only indication you get, and you only get that if you go down, admittedly, the obvious
But
path.
is the intimation
as a
then
new
that
user.
he's aware? Like, that just. Even if he's subliminally aware of the fact that there are branching pathways because he's dropping acid all the time, isn't that just the laziest shit ever? I don't know. It's just. I
agree.
I think the
But
potential.
again,
the potential was there.
I think the in the context of this being a choose your own adventure book, I think it's an okay exploration that they did, just to sort of, because this is bringing choose your own adventure stories
To a new
to the
generation.
masses, to the new generation, to a new platform.
You say remember that Goosebumps was the world's biggest
Yes.
phenomenon for a while. So
But
the masses
also,
have had it.
Goosebumps hasn't been in print for about 20 years. Let's just acknowledge that.
Fuck,
It's
we're gonna
in the
die
past.
soon, aren't we?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
I think, like, if they were going to do anything, like, this is the story they were going to do. And I think having a character like Colin be this, just like...
Omnipotent god.
Yeah, I don't... And
Force of
he's not a
unrivaled
god.
pure
He's just-
energy.
He's like,
Well,
he just
sees,
knows.
He sees through the veil.
He sees through it. He's not Morpheus. He's not able to produce things in this environment. He's just the pre-Morpheus Neo.
He's the
able
Oracle.
to see it.
He's the Oracle.
He's the Oracle.
Let me ruin all of this with my meta reading and defend
Sure.
everything they've done. Just for a twist. So, as is tradition, when something heady comes along and something cerebral, I try and ruin it by doing too much research and trying to make it about something it isn't.
Yep.
So I'm going to do that in true David fashion. I do have a stepladder for how far I'm reaching this time. So, we're going to talk about the illusion
This
of...
is top shelf.
This is top shelf David reaching.
Yeah.
We're going to talk about the illusion of choice, both a mental model and a meta reading, which sounds like it could be my manifesto. Okay, so
I feel like this is your thesis.
yeah, excuse me. Everyone sit down. This is my book report. I want to start with a definition of the illusion of choice as a mental model. And so Joshua Cannon, who's an academic, describes the illusion of choice as, and I quote, "The illusion of choice is a psychological mental model that states humans are happy if they believe that they have control over their own actions and can exercise free will. If free will is deprived or seemingly deprived from an individual, he or she will become resentful or rebellious, even if the choice forced upon him or her is identical to the one they would have chosen in their own accord." Which is to say, in human language, the idea of the illusion of choice is that no matter how much you want to do things, so humans like free will, and no matter how much someone decides for you, unless you feel like it's your choice, you reject it. It's the entire premise of the film Inception, right?
Right.
You can't you can't tell someone to do something. They have to think it's their own idea for them to fully
Really hard
accept
to
it.
resist the urge to just wow
I was hoping
into the
you would.
microphone.
I was waiting
It's
for you
just-
to.
I-
What do you think? Why are you here, Adam? I was like, he's gonna do it, and you failed me. So Joshua Cannon talks a lot about Benjamin Graham, who was a similar academic, and Benjamin Graham relates these concepts to computer operating systems. Here's our tie-in, boys. He spoke about how things like frugality, so the tendency to save money, or addiction, the tendency to repeat behaviors that have negative consequences, behave similar to computer operating systems or systems of logic. An example he gave about himself was how, despite being extremely wealthy, like this dude's making like £16,000 a week or whatever, he still sometimes walked an extra 2 blocks home to save a nickel on the subway. This was something that was baked into him from growing up poor, and even though he could afford a private car if he wanted to, or a fucking jet, he continued to be bound by these inherent rules of his operating system, these kind of inherent things that he believed were his own choices. I'm going to choose to walk home because, it's going to save me a nickel or whatever.
That's not a choice. That's kind of
no. Well,
that's a
every
habit.
We'll get to that. Kennan's interpretation of Graham's. This is where it's going to get weird. So stop me if it gets confusing. Kennan's interpretation of Graham's. Kennan's interpretation of Graham's thoughts on the illusion of choice look to one of several models as a solution. So what Kennan suggests is from Graham's research, where he talks about that example of the penny and the subway, or the nickels and the subway and stuff, is Kennan suggesting that the reason that Graham felt so conflicted about him walking the extra block is that he knows he doesn't need to, right? So he feels like he's robbed of the choice to do that, because it just kind of it's out of habit, as Adam said, it's something that you do kind of repetitively. It's baked into your DNA. And he started to resent walking, but he couldn't break, like he couldn't
Fucking walking.
Yeah, like because he's like a
Fucking
rich.
hate
He's
it.
like he kind of and so. Kennan talks about there are different ways you can combat this illusion of choice, where you sort of start to rail against things that are fine. Like the fact that he walks a block and a half instead of getting the subway to the next station doesn't matter, but it starts to consume you and it becomes something that you despise. And you see that in this story with Stefan in a lot of ways, where it's like little things that his dad does that he starts to just kind of build this antithesis towards,
You've got minced juice.
Yeah, exactly. And one of Kennan's interpretations as a solution for this is Morton's fork, which is a thinking model that is a combat to the illusion of choice. And Morton's fork, interestingly, is the fork, and we talk about this in literary theory, but it's actually a mental model, is a choice between two equally unpleasant alternatives. Or, as we call it in writing, the choice between
Talking to
the
David.
two worst options. What did you say?
No? What?
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 Did you do a bit? I missed
I
it.
did a bit, but you missed it.
I was quoting someone, so I feel like...
I feel-
It's alright.
Yeah, I'll fix it in the edit.
I feel hurt. I feel hurt.
Morton's fork is, and I quote, a choice between two equally unpleasant alternatives, in other words, a dilemma, or two lines of reasoning that lead to a same unpleasant conclusion. It is analogous to the expression between the devil and the deep blue sea and between a rock and a hard place. End quote. So Morton's fork intimates that the illusion of choice is both irrelevant and of no value to anyone because there aren't any good options. Everything eventually ends poorly. All things and all options will fail to fix you. Even if, in his example, Kennan decided to get a private car home, he'd still feel guilty because he could have walked home. But when he gets the subway, he feels weird because he knows it is. So he gets the subway and walks and saves the nickel. He knows he doesn't need to. There's no option there where he feels better about himself. And this seems especially relevant given the forking paths is a key symbol of the story, right, Adam? Like that symbol of the forks that you can choose on the monitor is a direct reference to Morton's fork, which is that idea of like
Right.
both options are going to end poorly. Is that something that resonates with you at all? I know I spoke very quickly just then, but
It aggravates the fuck out of me.
what, did I speak quick or that ruins the story?
No, that it ruins the story. It just...
So the idea is that the illusion of choice mental model refers to that concept where it's like, even though like it doesn't matter whether you make a choice or don't make a choice, if you're unable
Doesn't
to
that
make
just feel lazy and aggravating as a viewer? To know that
That's
what you're
kind of-
watching,
that's why I
literally
don't
being
like it,
told
yeah.
by the thing you're watching, this doesn't matter.
but then
How is
there's a way
that
to do
supposed
that
to engage a viewer?
because there's a way to do that that's interesting. I think like I
You can do it like all cryptically and all cool.
you can do it like Rick and Morty does it possibly well.
Yeah.
Where they at least make you they offer a temporary solution, which is go watch TV with your family because none of this matters. Go be happy for a moment, right? So like they offer you a solution. I think Bandersnatch's big fault is that as you grow toward the end of the narrative, there isn't like an actual like it's never addressed in the text itself. It's just omnipresent that it doesn't matter what you do, you're going to go through these loops forever, and Stefan has never really changed, and like the outcome doesn't really matter. Like I think that it's not insulting's the wrong word, but like it seems like they forgot that they had to write an ending to the themes. Like they didn't have any close to the themes, you know.
Plus, it doesn't stop either. I know you mentioned that earlier.
I haven't yet, but that bothered the shit. When we were watching it, that bothered the shit out of me.
You finish it,
and it goes.
And then you get the credits.
Yeah.
You get the final scene, and then it loops you back in, and it's like, no, I was quite content with actually just getting the credits.
I think I said
and then
stop
leaving and going
times.
on with my life.
I have the audio recordings.
Yeah,
you asked
the machine to stop, but the machine wouldn't
The
stop.
machine man, and Adam was like, "We go for another loop. We're riding this cowboy till it dies."
Well, I think that comes back to the fact that they were really forcing the whole choices thing.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Look, when I got the ending where it goes to the present, and it's Pearl making the Bandersnatch that we're watching, when that happened and the credits rolled, I left.
I was
like, all right, I'm
I
done.
checked out, but then it keeps going, and I'm like, no, I don't want
Yeah,
it.
you can just hit exit the credit. You can just say exit
Yeah,
to
but
main menu.
Adam and I were doing research for this show, so
I didn't want to just end it myself. I wanted to see how the show ended itself.
and it just kept
Well, I
going.
knew when I watched it with you, David. I'd already done it for like 6 hours, I think.
Jesus.
Well, do you want to know
we went through every possible option.
Did you guys get the ending where there's like an after credit scene where he's back on the bus and he puts in, like, instead of the 2 tapes that you choose from to listen to while on the bus, he puts in like a Bandersnatch tape and listens to that. Did you get that ending?
I didn't get that one. No,
I think I've seen that.
So that's like a
Maybe on
hidden.
YouTube.
That's like a hidden one. It's like an after credit scene. It's explicitly quite hidden. Do you want to know the crazy thing about that scene?
What's that?
So when he puts the Bandersnatch tape in, it plays just like all this static noise and just like beeps and boops, which is on paper like that's just like, oh, it's creepy and
What's
scary.
it stand for, Ben?
The
So
Morse code.
old 8-bit computers use tape to record. Instead of CDs, they use tape. That audio, if you take the audio that was
it's a game,
playing
isn't it?
and transposed it and put it in a ZX Spectrum emulator, it runs.
I heard about this.
It runs Nosedive.
Yes.
You actually get the
You can play
Nosedive
it.
game.
Yeah, I heard
So
about that.
they made Nosedive, got the audio, because
God.
I think Jontron's made this game where he had like a Hercules game that was on thing. He's like, let's boot it up, and he put it in a audio player, and it's just like, because that's what a ZX Spectrum game
it's a
sounds
good
like on a
joke,
tape
yeah.
player. But like I think
But isn't that a concern that they were so worried about being so meta that like, because like again, like if you think
They were
about
being
like,
very meta.
like Morton's
Yeah.
Fork, like
How much budget do you think went into doing that? Because I feel like that could have been reallocated.
that's like no,
somewhere
that's
more.
just it doesn't. In the
Is that like an afternoon for some dude, or is that like
the show,
5
the
weeks
fact
for a
that-
team?
in the show, the fact that
probably an afternoon.
both Colin and Stefan are like solo developers for these best-selling games, that's pretty accurate for the 80s. Like for that era of computing, at least for 8-bit computers, because it was, you just had, if your dad bought you a ZX Spectrum because you liked computers, you just make games on it. That kind of thing is pretty realistic. So like, yeah, you could pump out a ZX Spectrum game, if in a week. If you're Netflix, sure, like it's not that.
But again, the problem with Netflix is we have no idea of budgets of views actually.
Because they don't actually
Because they
release
don't publish
that stuff.
this. So I think to kind of wrap all our thoughts together, and to try and put it in a bow, 'cause it's been quite not a long episode, but it'll be a lot of editing. I think, actually before I do my wrap up, Adam, do you have any kind of closing thoughts that you wanted to add?
I didn't.
You can just
enjoy
say no,
this.
you
This
just say
was
no, it's
just-
fine.
Ben normally goes, it was a good one.
It was a good one. I disagree.
It was a bad one. You could say that too.
Yeah, the bad choice element doesn't take away from how good it looked, how great it sounded, and how neat the idea was. It's just it suffers from the same thing that the rest of Black Mirror suffers from, in my opinion, where it's in this weird grey zone between ultra serious, just dread-inducing content and very funny satire content. It's stuck in between, and it doesn't know which one it is because it's constantly flip-flopping, and it just feels jarring as a viewer. It doesn't feel cool and edgy and unique. It just feels annoying.
I think that's quite a
That is-
pithy way of kind of wrapping it up. Do you have any closing thoughts, Ben, before I do
Well,
my
I
thing?
think it's fine.
Ben had a good time with it.
I enjoyed it. Get off my dick.
I
Don't
think it speaks to don't at him. I think it speaks to like the way that they put it together, that everyone can have such a, again, it speaks to the fact that the choices matter, where everyone can have such a different experience with it. You know, and I'm speaking from like, again, I appreciate what they were trying to do, but I was critical of the script itself. But that's just me. That's because I'm a writer, right? I view things through language. That's just how I function. Whereas I think for a company like Netflix to spend the money on this, and for someone like Charlie Brooker, who has had some really good stuff like Hang the DJ, White Christmas, there are a few really good episodes, either the USS Callister.
I watched that one. That was really cool.
Yeah, there are some great episodes of Black Mirror that really express and execute the ideas really well. And there are not so great episodes. It's like any TV show or any media. And it's interesting that a show about technology and technology's influence on our society has made a thing that is a bit new and a bit different, that reinterprets something old, that has become so successful that it's become practically beyond criticism for most people. Is fucking fascinating to me. And if Black Mirror hasn't told us anything, it's that we should all be a little more cautious of this kind of popularity and this kind of media. And, you know, when you talk about like circular loops and circular logic, a show about warning about the dangers of technology taking over some of the pop culture discourse with some new technology that's nostalgic, maybe speaks to an underlying problem in our society today. But I think it's a really interesting piece of film. I think it's really interestingly executed, and I'm curious to see where they go next. They're doing a full season of TV show this year, which I'm excited about. And I'm keen to see where this kind of choose your own adventure thing goes next. But honestly, they like, if this is so popular, they should pay the employees of The Walking Dead. Like, it's not that hard. Those are my kind of closing thoughts. We're not going to do a post show this week because we've kind of delayed starting and it's already really late. I'll put up instead. No, it's all good. I'll put up instead some behind the scenes stuff on our Patreon about the book development and commentary between myself and Aaron that I have in my archive. Adam, before we get into our pluggy bits, did you want to plug your channel and maybe your Life is Strange video?
YouTube.com/ThatAdly. There's a video on Bandersnatch, probably a uncomfortably long one, coming out within the next couple weeks. I'm in the middle of scripting it right now, so once I get like past that hurdle, it'll be done in like a short bit. You can watch some other videos. I talked about Life is Strange.
I really like that video.
Watch it.
Yeah, that's really good. I really like the Sea of Thieves one is one of my favorites, which I keep peddling.
Oh, it's fun.
I've
actually got back into that. It's quite good.
Yeah, it's a great game.
We should do it on stream.
We'll do it at some point. Oh yeah, also Adam and I stream at 7 a.m. Brisbane time.
/ThatAdly.
And what time is it in Belfast when we stream?
It's 9 p.m. in the UK. It's 7 a.m. in Brisbane. It's 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4 p.m. in East Coast America.
3, 2, 1
5,
p.m.
6, 7.
1
p.m. in West Coast.
Yeah, every
America.
Saturday, every week.
And then if you're anywhere else, you don't matter. You don't matter.
Or you can just look it up.
You're irrelevant.
It's fun. We play all
It's
kinds
GMT.
of games. It's very wholesome. We often get very deep by accident, so keep an eye out for that. Otherwise,
we're going too deep, man.
We're going too deep. Next week, we are doing an episode of Moonlighter, the indie game. I'm going to be joined.
I'm not here.
Going to be joined by my good friend Aaron.
Week off.
Ben's got a week off. He's probably going to kick his feet up and play Super Smash Brothers in preparation for his birthday.
Or just Warframe.
Probably.
Yep,
So keep an eye out for that.
Yeah, it'll be Warframe.
Yeah.
Dude, you're near the 500-hour threshold on that thing.
I think I've hit a 500 hours.
I don't think you've surpassed my Skyrim yet, but you're getting
No,
close.
getting close.
That's on one platform.
I think I hit 500 hours recently. Yeah.
But otherwise,
Are you looking it up?
Yeah, no, it's 491 hours played.
Ooh,
Compared-
go home and
find
tell
out-
me.
Dude, I wanna be in a
Check my
call with you when you hit 500.
Adam, check my Skyrim. But otherwise, Ben, where can people find us?
Facebook,
At DCM Works Social.
YouTube,
YouTube.com/DCM.
Twitter,
At DCM_works.
Patreon. See you later, Adley.
Patreon.com/DCMworks. You can subscribe for $3 a month. All of our content is there's 50 plus behind the scenes episodes, things like our interface audiobook. You'll grab access to the post shows for our Art for Artists podcast, where it's an extra 20 minutes of just Ben and I reading comments, addressing ideas from previous episodes, combating Patrick's criticism sometimes, all kinds of different interesting things.
Good fun stuff.
It's a bit of behind the scenes, a bit more relaxed. It's kind of Art for Artists after hours is how I think of it, which is a great slogan. Why aren't we using that more? After
sure.
Hours After. It's got a nice kind of assonance to it, I think. Yeah, check it out. $3 a month. You get also access to our interface audio drama, which is a kind of anthology story that's very creepy and weird. We've got the next part 8, coming up in the next month when Ben and I get a chance to record it. Otherwise, there's all kinds of good stuff. You get a 10% discount on my book, which you can buy at mainontrick.com. Otherwise, if you want to follow us individually, I'm at DCM I Hate Pie.
I'm at Literal Citrus.
And we will see you guys next week.
We will.